Hi gang, Scott here. This video is the beginning of a mini-series on masking in ON1 with ON1 tools, Photo RAW, effects, any of the ON1 tools that offer masking. And the reason this came up is I did a presentation to a camera club not too long ago, and one of the recurring themes was using masking, using selective adjustments to strengthen the story of your photo. That's why we have tools like masks, so we can treat different areas of our photo to guide our viewer and make our photo stronger. And so I thought, well, there were good questions about masking during this presentation, so how about a series of videos that talk about it? So this one will be like masking 101. In brief, what is a mask? Why do we care? And I'll show you the various places in ON1 that you can apply masks and some of the common settings that we might use for masks, just concepts right now. And the series of videos will get into each one of the individual tools. So you'll, at the end of this, you'll have like the full breadth of the various tools that are around in ON1 to build some very intricate, very complex masks, but not with too much heavy lifting. So with that, why don't we get started? So top order item, what is a mask? In brief, it's a selective application of some change to your photo. And I know that's a very dry, boring explanation, but why is it called a mask? And you hear terms like black conceals, white reveals. What do these things mean around masking? This is a real cheesy way to remember it, but you're gonna remember it. Think about Batman or Zorro, the superheroes that have a black mask on their face, but they have cutouts that show the whites of their eyes. That's your black conceals, white reveals in a nutshell. A mask usually has an area of the photo that is covered, right? We are not treating a certain area of the photo. That appears as a black tone in a mask. And the white areas, the whites of the eyes in my silly Zorro example, that is the area that is treated in your photo. It's the part that shows through. And this concept comes really from layering, where you had like stacks of photos, or you can even think of it as really old school stacks of paper, and then you would cut out segments of a piece of paper that's higher up so you could see through to the lower down area. But this same notion applies to effects and applies to local adjustments. So when you hear the term mask, really it just means a selective application of whatever it is you're working with. And there are ways to visualize it in black and white, where you see black meaning no treatment whatsoever or completely opaque, white being full application of something or completely transparent in the case of layers, and anything in between becomes shades of gray. And so why don't I show you just an example of what a mask might look like, and this is why you hear these terms, black conceals, white reveals kind of thing. Here's a photo I've done this very strong color cast treatment to, so that we can visualize what masks really do for our photos, right? This is before that. But after, let me open up this one here and turn that on. You can see I've got these three circles here of varying strength showing these color casts here. This is a mask, but what I want to show you is why do we say black conceals, white reveals. Here is, from left to right, 100% strength of a mask, pure white, 50% middle gray there, and then 25% on the right, which is a darker gray, and the surrounding is all black. When we look at the photo, that color treatment, you can see full strength at 100%, partial strength, 50% strength, 25% strength. So you have these controls of how strong or weak the mask is. This is common across all masking types. And so when we see a mask and we look at it in a grayscale mode, this is where we get this term black conceals, white reveals. So that in a nutshell is masking. Selective application of things, and we have these various tools. We can control strength. We'll get into all the tools in the series of videos here. But, let me cover a couple of other things just in general about masking in ON1. Where can you do masks, and what are some of the common controls for masks? You can apply masks in ON1 anywhere that you see this small masking icon, this gray rectangle with a black circle in the center. that indicates this is something that you can apply a mask to. And in ON1 effects, you're running as a plugin, there are 4 places that you can apply masks. And in ON1 Photo RAW, there's even more. I think it goes up to 6. Let's go through effects first, and then I'll verbalize what you can do in Photo RAW too. So first you have the individual filters. And you've seen this already with our example of these circles here. Any of the filters, any of the effects filters can have a mask applied to them. Just, you click on that thing, you get to your masking tools, and you can apply selectively those filters. The second place in effects is the entire filter stack. If I were to click here on this masking options and create masks at the filter stack level, that mask will apply to all of my filters. So it's like a global mask for all of your effects. I don't use that one often, but I point it out because sometimes we'll click on it by mistake and then wonder why our filters aren't behaving the way we think. So there's a distinction between the individual filter mask and the global filter stack mask. The third place is in layers. If you're working with layers, you'll see there's that icon again, and we can apply masks to layers. That might be for compositing or blending textures, things like that, where you want to selectively have portions of a layer be visible or invisible. And the last place is in locals. In effects, we also have the local adjustments, and we can apply masks. And actually, when you add an adjustment by default, it is a black mask, entirely concealed. And then you would choose a masking tool to add in the local adjustment that you want. Now, if you're using Photo RAW, ON1 Photo RAW as your hub, in addition to everything in effects, layers, local adjustments, you also have masking in portrait. And portrait will guide you through that. The face detection creates a mask for you, and then you can refine it with masking tools. And you have Sky Swap AI that also uses and creates a mask to do the sky swap work. So there's masking all over the place, but the key thing is look for these little icons here that have that little rectangle with a black circle in it. That means you can apply a mask to that element. There are a few common controls for all masks. When you have a mask created, there are things that you can do with it, irrespective of how you created it. Different videos in this series will go into the individual tools and how we build up our masks and create them. But once you have a mask in place, there's a variety of things that you can do, and these controls apply to all masks. So let's have a look at them. I like to look at them in the masking options area. This just makes it the easiest for me. So I'll click on that swatch there, open up my masking options here, right? These are these controls all in this area here. Ones that are common for all masks. First, we have a bunch of buttons, right? We can invert the mask. So if I click invert, we'll see now I am concealing this color treatment from all of the areas around the outside. And I'm applying it full strength, partial strength, very softly here with those different opacity masks, right? That 100, 50, 25% that I use the tools for. We can reset the mask. So clear it out, make it go away. I'll undo that. We can copy and paste masks. That's very useful if you want to copy something and apply it to another filter, a layer, a local adjustment. You can copy and paste the masks across anything that can be masked in ON1. So you don't have to limit to filters if you're working with filters. I can copy this mask and I could paste it to, say, a local adjustment, which you can see I've done previously. I'll paste that down. And there we go. So that's a very quick and easy way to move your masks around. What else do we have? Let's turn off that local. That's rough to look at. Lumen, that's for a luminosity mask. We'll cover that in a different video. View the mask. So if I click view, we see the mask in that grayscale mode. I'll come back to viewing mask in just a moment because there are 2 different view modes, but let's finish off with the common controls for masks. So we can turn the view off and on. That is also controllable by the O key. O for overlay, the mask view overlay. So O, good keyboard shortcut to know about when you're working with masks. The last two controls that are common for all masks, density and feather. Let me start with feather because that one will be more familiar, right? We take the feather slider, and as we push it up, we'll see the edges of our mask get softer, and then we can really start to see it get aggressive as you go farther and farther. So if you've painted a mask or you've built a mask and you need to just soften it up a little bit, you have a feather control. This affects the entire mask. So if you've used 1, 2, 3, 4, however many masking tools to build up your mask, this feather slider adjusts the edges of all of them. Density is also a global control. And density is like a strength slider. It's a little different than opacity, but if you wanted to have some of the filter or the local be reduced or enhanced depending on what you're looking at, like I'm reducing it here, but I'm enhancing it here, you have this density slider. Let me turn off the view so you can kind of get a feel for how that works. I have this color grading here, and as I reduce density, like the outside area of this photo has a full black mask. As I reduce density, that black is getting weaker. It's starting to become a light gray. When I stop and I view, now that's a lighter gray. So I have some of that color grading in there, and I could go further and I have some more. I still have those painted masks that I have, but I'm reducing the strength or the density. That's the density. The darkness of dark parts of the mask get less dark. Maybe that's the best way to think of it. And so black masks, dark gray masks become brighter, and that means more of what you're working with. And a filter, a local adjustment, more of that becomes revealed. As it goes toward white, it becomes revealed. So common controls for masks are all up in this masking area. There are menu options for many of these things, but I find it most convenient to work just right here in the panels with the filter or with the local that you're working with. Let's come back to the view modes. There's two different view modes for looking at masks in ON1 tools. One we've already seen, Grayscale. The other is a red overlay. And it really just depends on where you are with your masking, what you're working on, which one might make sense for you to operate with. So you control the view modes in the view mode menu of the mask area. And so I have Grayscale, red overlay. You can also, while you're doing brushing, have the red overlay show up. I'll show you that when we do a video on the brush mask tool. But let me switch this to red overlay. Now you'll notice nothing happened whilst I'm not viewing the mask. If I click my view button or I press my O key off, on, whatever your view mode is, that's how you'll see the mask. Now here, this red overlay, I don't find it particularly helpful for this particular photo, but a different photo when you're painting, say, something quite intricate and you want to see that red show up, but I still need to see the photo, that's where the red overlay is nice because you can still see, I can see the flower here, but when I'm working with, say, a grayscale mode, if I change that back to grayscale, I'm working with my masking tools, I can't see what I'm working on. And so often you'll use both modes in your masking work, where you'll start, say, with red overlay because you can see where the photo is and decide roughly where you want the mask. But if you have to do some more intricate work, you may switch to a grayscale mode because it's much crisper to see just that monochrome mask and understand, did I miss an edge? Like for whatever reason, let's say I had a little spire on the top of this. I needed to make sure that was in there. I can see that more clearly with grayscale than I can with red overlay. Now, if you were quite observant, you noticed that in my view mode menu, my grayscale and my red overlay had a keyboard shortcut associated with them. Those are not defaults in ON1 tools. The default that is in there is the O key, right? Just to toggle the view off and on. O key, O key. Well, because I find it useful to switch between grayscale and red overlay often in my masking, and going up to the menus, this is cumbersome. I've set up keyboard shortcuts to control that. And so you can do that in your edit menu, keyboard shortcuts. the way these work is you'll create your own style here. Mine is just Scott Davenport shortcuts. But if I look for Grayscale, there it is. I've set this up to be, in my case, I'm on a Mac, so it's Control Option O. I'm looking for something with O in it because I like O as my toggle for viewing my mask, and I want variations on that for changing my modes. And so for me, Control Option, which I think would be like Control Alt, it might be on a or Function Alt on a Windows machine. So I've set that mode up, and then for my red overlay, here's red overlay, I just have a straight Option O, and that would be like I think that would be Alt O on a Windows machine. So if I do my keyboard shortcut for Grayscale and then my keyboard shortcut for overlay, a red overlay, I can move back and forth between these, as well as just O to turn it off and on while I'm masking, and I don't have to jump up to the menus. It gives me a smoother workflow. So keyboard shortcuts with masking are quite helpful, especially the overlay mode. So I'd advocate going and setting up a couple of shortcuts for overlays. You can use whatever you like. It doesn't have to be these, multi, Command, Control, Option, O keys. They can be whatever you like. You can set them up. But give yourself those options with your keyboard to quickly move between those different view modes. One last common thing we can do with masks is save them in presets. Presets are great for jump-starting a style of a photo, and you can include masks in the preset. It doesn't make sense for every kind of mask. For some kinds, it does, like if you're doing just a gradation mask, something that just covers portions of a photo, luminosity masks, things that are more global in nature that are not specific to an object in your photo. Those are good candidates for including in presets. And to include any masks in a preset, when you're creating the preset, settings, save preset, for things like effects or local adjustments, or if you're working in Photo RAW, portrait, or sky, you'll see, do you want to include the masks when you create the preset or not? And you can choose to include, maybe the effects masks make sense, but local adjustments often are tied to specific objects or elements in a photo. Those might not make sense. You have this option, so you can create some pretty powerful presets that include some masks like luminosity masks or color range masks. So know about the option, know that it's there. So now that you know all about the basics of masking, what tools do you have available to do masks in ON1? There's a whole lot of them. There's the AI quick mask. You have the masking bug, which is your gradient tool for straight-edged gradients, reflected gradients, radial oval shapes. You have the line mask. You have the classic masking brush. You have the perfect brush, which is edge detection in that brush. Custom brushes for custom shapes. What else is there? Luminosity masks to build a mask based off the tones in your photo. Color range masks so you can leverage ON1 smarts for detecting colors and building a mask. If you're using Photo RAW, you also have sky masking, the ability for ON1 to just detect, here's the sky in the scene, build you a mask for it. Lots of stuff in there. That's what the series of videos will be about. We'll go through all of those different tools, and then there's refining tools as well. So once you've got that mask built, you can refine them, smoothing edges, adding or subtracting pixels in certain areas just to get your mask perfectly right the way you want it. So come back and join me for the next video in this masking series. And if you got other questions, go ahead and drop them below. And until then, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.